What's going on, you guys? This is Luke with Dark Fiction Factory. Today we are taking a look at some of the history of video game movies and the potential future of video game movies. Are they the next big thing, or just a flash in the pan? I think the key is to look at another genre of movies, mainly the superhero genre, and kind of compare the origins of the two. So let's jump in and take a look. Video game movies have gotten a bad rap over the years. It really all started with the Super Mario Bros. Movie in 1993, which is really the first significant video game movie release. At the time, Super Mario was one of, if not the most commonly known household video game name, and the studio decided to make a movie. But the problem was the movie was just terrible. And not in a fun, terrible way, in a just bad, terrible way. Of course, that's just my opinion, but the film did not do very well. It released on May 28th, 1993, and was pretty much of a huge failure critically and commercially. It made about just under $40 million worldwide on a budget of anywhere between 42 to 48 million. The simple fact that we never got a sequel from Hollywood tells you that it was pretty much of a bomb. You have to keep in mind this is back in the early 90s, so at this point the video game culture is still a relatively new phenomenon, and there's really no sense of nostalgia that's been built up over generations quite yet. Nothing that made Hollywood really stop and think, wow, we could make a lot of money on this. So over the years there were some video game movies that came out. Some were moderately successful, like for instance Resident Evil spawned a pretty long series of films. A lot of people thought some of the Mortal Kombat early movies were at least decent, but you had stuff like Street Fighter that was really not very good. You had just a lot of movies that were just sort of half-hearted, but nothing that really was a huge hit and became a big part of the public discourse. Now, meanwhile, the comic book genre just blew up. There had been blips on the Hollywood radar going back as far as the old black and white Superman TV show. The 1960s saw the campy but undeniably fun Batman series in color, no less. Of course, Tim Burton's 1989 Batman was a giant breakthrough success, although even that series faltered and petered out after just a few more installments. Then in 2002, Spider-Man came along and changed everything. Sure, X-Men had come out a little bit before that in 2000, but Spider-Man really took everything to a new level and captivated the world. Suddenly, comic characters were done correctly. Sticking to the source material with a good director and a good cast turned out to be a winning formula. Who would have thought? The fans loved it, the critics loved it, and most of all, it became the first film to gross over $100 million in its first weekend, and was one of the highest grossing films ever at that point. It didn't take long for Marvel to realize they had a huge cash cow and a huge opportunity right in their hands. They put out a bunch of superhero comic book movies that really varied in success until they came up with the shared universe, thus spawning one of the most revolutionary and profitable endeavors in cinematic history with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the MCU. Nowadays, comic characters have become something everyone knows and most people love. We grew up with this stuff in our comic books and in our Saturday morning cartoons, and now we've grown up to become the paying adult audience that loves to see this nostalgia on screen. But is it possible that these superhero films are starting to run out of steam? Is there a bit of maybe viewer fatigue? Having to watch one to understand the other, and then also have to watch the Disney series to understand what's going on in the next sequel. It's become a bit of a chore to keep up with some of these shared universes. Is there a potential opening for a new genre of nostalgic heroes to move in and take over the box office and the public consciousness? I would say yes, and that being video game movies. And when I say movies here in 2023, I of course mean theatrical releases, I mean direct to streaming, TV series. Going back to video games, what was once sort of the black sheep of the film market, really seems like it's potentially poised to take over Hollywood. The box office has seen some recent successes with Sonic the Hedgehog, and even more so with its sequel. And now video game movies are about to come full circle because at the time of this recording, it's only a few weeks away from the new animated Super Mario Bros. Movie, which from all projections and all the hype that it surrounds, it seems like it's going to do pretty well financially. Possibly spawning its own shared universe with other characters that are in that film, like Donkey Kong, Yoshi, Princess Peach. It's pretty easy to see how they could spin the first Mario movie off into a lot of different directions. And on the more darker side of gaming, The Last of Us is seeing a lot of success right now. It's not only the biggest thing really on HBO Max, but it's one of the most talked about things in entertainment and the public sphere at this point. The powers that be, whether that's Hollywood or Netflix or even independent film producers, are going to start standing up and really taking notice to this trend. Comic book movies were silly until the generation that loved them grew up and became the paying adults who appreciated well-produced entertainment based on their favorite nostalgic childhood characters. And the same thing is happening now with video games. I was born in 1983 and I grew up with Super Mario, I grew up with the Nintendo, and I still play Mario and Nintendo games on the Switch here in 2003. I will be more than happy to pay for any good video game movies or shows. And I know most of my peers would be too. So I think personally that as comic book movie fatigue starts to set in, I don't think comic book movies are going away by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not trying to make a complete overstatement, but I do think that video game movies are going to jumpstart a whole new era of films and a whole new genre of films, very reminiscent to the beginning of the MCU and the original Spider-Man. Plus, think about it, this is an absolute slam dunk for marketing. Even if you go walk around like a Walmart or a Target now, you'll see video game merchandise, toys, t-shirts, everything. You'll see so much of that already exists. So if they could tie that into film releases, they could make so much extra money besides what they make on the actual film. And it's not hard to figure that new games and movies could even release simultaneously. I mean, imagine a world where a game and a movie kind of are released at the same time and sort of work hand in hand to create this sort of new cohesive experience into something that could be really fresh and really original. It could even, even imagine a world where they create some sort of gaming live experience that you could go to a theater for. You know, the theaters are struggling, they're looking for new ways to innovate. There's really endless possibilities with this, especially with artificial intelligence and virtual reality becoming more and more sophisticated every day. But who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong and the whole video game movie scene will crash and burn much like it did with the original Mario Brother movie, but I don't think so. I think it's gonna really take off from here. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Feel free to drop a comment below. And also, if there's any video games that you think would translate very well to a film or to a TV show, be sure to drop that below too and we can talk about it. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care. For more content, check out darkfictionfactory.com.